based on what they're doing for cooling. If they're doing something that at the end they have a byproduct or they have processed water that they're getting rid of, that sort of thing would require a permit. But I believe that that, at least for the sites that we're aware of now, that has not been a need. We have also polled some other states through some organizations that we're part of. Understand that their sounds very much to be like an emerging issue for many states. The ones that we know that have taken some actions on the regulatory front have been where they have located these sites next to perhaps a new natural gas turbine. I know New York ran into that issue. They were going into old coal-fired power plant sites and putting in a new generating unit that was natural gas fired, and then building a bunch of these, and I think New York put some restrictions in on that. So I think this conversation today, these questions that are being asked are very helpful as we plan for what we're looking at. But as of now, this is not, we have not seen operations and sites that have a large environmental, or at least from a regulatory permitting standpoint. I see Representative Ladyman, and I will mention, I know earlier you raised the question about EPA and having a noise rule. It is my understanding that the noise rule has been around since the early 70s. I believe a lot has transpired with that, so that there is, there's not really a federal standard for that, for the noise regulations from EPA in the same way we have standards on air emissions or on our water quality, the way those programs work. The other piece is with our Clean Air Act programs, our Clean Water Act programs, we have delegated authority from the feds, from the federal government, to operate and run those programs on the state level. We don't have any delegation for any federal noise, Federal Noise Control Act, or I can't remember the exact name. That's not a delegated program for us. So we're left with, and there's really not one. That has been primarily, and as you stated earlier, it's in some of the language that the EPA will share, is it's primarily a state and local issue. And that is my understanding of how it has been regulated. And for us, we have, in our state authorities that the General Assembly has given us, we don't have direct authorities over noise in that way. We have is taken into account in some things our air section looks at with shooting ranges and with motor vehicle racing sites, racetracks. Those are the two places that it's part of it, but really those, particularly on the motor vehicle racing, that there's actually a component of air emission and air quality that's really the primary driver. So I did want to try to go ahead and answer that for you. You may have additional questions, but want to throw that out there. And that's really what we have to offer now, but we welcome questions or future discussion with you all as you evaluate what our path forward should be.
So one question I have is on the water usage of the sites, as far as the amount of water that they use to make sure that they're not overburdensome. I know there's industries that use a whole lot more water than the Bitcoin mining folks do. But is that something that y'all look at? Is that something that we need to allow you to start looking at to make sure that we're using that resource as wisely as possible in these situations?
As of now, and I understand someone presented earlier about some new technologies for cooling that they're trying to use. I think it's definitely something that we will have on our radar. I don't know that we would need any new authorities to do that. The way the Clean Water Act programs work is when something is discharged or released into a creek or a river or some other water body, that is where we have a point that we can permit that. So we would have to know more about the type of specific activity that's going on, what is happening with the water. But I do think it would probably likely fall under some of our existing programs, if there was. But as of now, we dug into this a little bit because it seems like something that there would be some sort of cooling water process. Have not turned up much, but I also recognize, as was shared earlier, this is very much an emerging and dynamic field. But I think we have the basic toolkit we need as of right now, and certainly would share with you all, Mr. Chair, and others if we see a need or a gap in what we can do.
Y'all don't look at the inputs, y'all just look at the outputs at this point.
Yes, we're worried about what's discharged.
Okay. Senator Gilmore.
Well, and just to follow up on that line of question,